return on the business. IEPFA at Ministry of Corporate Affairs, financial sector regulators in India, and ministries and department of governments of India, and agencies like NCFE, NABARD, SIDBI, etc., are already working in the area of financial education and financial inclusion. Given the global importance attached to gender equality and women economic empowerment, maybe it is high time that all the stakeholders come together to create focused approach on promoting gender equality and women economic empowerment through financial education. We will learn more in the webinar today on what is being done currently and what needs to be additionally done to promote gender equality and women economic empowerment through financial education. Now, coming back to this program, the structure that we would be following is, first, there would be opening remarks by DG and CEO of IICA, Sri Praveen Kumar ji. Then there would be keynote address by Sri Manoj Pandey ji. Then there would be presentation by the experts on the subject. Subsequently, we would be taking a follow-up questions, including those raised by participants with the experts on the panel. Finally, we would have a vote of thanks. Let me begin with brief introduction of Sri Praveen Kumar ji before I invite him for delivering his opening remarks. He is a 1987 batch retired IAS officer of Tamil Nadu cadre and has held various responsibilities in government of Tamil Nadu and government of India in multiple departments such as finance, industries, education, corporate affairs, even renewable energy, elections, etc. He retired from Government of India as Secretary, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship before taking up the current role of DG and CEO of IICA. With that brief introduction, I would invite Sri Praveen Kumarji to offer the opening remarks. Sri Praveen Kumarji, please, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Kamakeji. Good morning to all participants on this web symposium or web webinar, as we call it now, especially Mr. Manoj Pandey, the Joint Secretary, who could take out time, especially on a Sunday, to deliver the keynote address. The Economic Advisor of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Ms. Nandita Mishra, then Professor IIT Delhi, Seema Sharma, and again founder Dhanchak Financial Education, Srimati Monika Halan. So what we see here is a eclectic mix of government, academia, and the civil society discuss on this very important topic of financial education in promoting gender equality and women empowerment. This webinar we are conducting as part of our Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, and also it happens to be the World Social Justice Day, good synergy of two values under both Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav and also the World Social Justice Day. So we came forward to have this symposium on this occasion as such. And I hope at the end of the seminar, whatever we learn, whatever the lessons, we would like to incorporate them in our IICA initiatives relating to gender equality, investor promotion amongst women, gender orientation and CSR, and other activities, so that we want to further our gender focus in our initiatives which we take under IICA, under various schools, under various streams. One good thing after 70 years of independence and the world also becoming one world is that gender equality is not being questioned as an objective, and everyone accepts gender equality as an important objective to be attained. Is part of the SDG also, was part of MDG also earlier. So it is there. But however, how we go about it, how much effort we are putting into it, what are the strategies, pathways for that, that may vary from one country to another, one state to another, one institution to another. Gender equality as such is a very big subject, and many manifestations in this is there. Right from the birth statistics, you get reflected in gender equality, the child birth ratio, then the longevity ratio of the children, and then again the health characteristics like stunting and all that. In all that, gender equality comes in, where we see the girls are less privileged compared to the boys in growing up. Then education, of course, we have this the net enrollment ratio very different between boys and girls. Health, work environment, everywhere the gender is an issue, and we need a multi-pronged approach to address this basic challenge to achieve gender equality. Government has been trying, has taken various initiatives on this issue, like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, Mahila Shakti Kendi, the self-help group movement. Even the Ujjwala scheme is basically a gender initiative where you replace the smoky chulhas with the gas. Skill development for women, upskilling women, and so that they become participants in the economy. So all the various initiatives have been taken. Rather, if you see any activity, we can see from the gender perspective that how it is addressing the gender equality issue to three levels, whether it is gender insensitive, second, whether it is gender neutral, and third, whether it is consciously trying to address the gendered disadvantage which the women face. So three ways each any interventions can be looked into. In this symposium, we are trying to limit our discussions. It's a very vast subject, and you can talk and talk. 3 day seminar on this. We'll limit our discussion to the subject of financial education and perhaps financial inclusion as part of the financial education part. Now, if you ask me, what is the most important component in if women to move on the path of empowerment, I will say financial education lies at one of the top hierarchy of interventions required for empowerment of women. Because finance is a lubricant on which the markets run. And it's markets which determine the terms of exchange between various factors of business. Whether agriculture gets how much, the industry gets how much, the labor gets how much. So market determines the exchange ratio between various factors of production. And this market is lubricated by finance. So anyone who is financially illiterate would not be able to efficiently utilize the opportunities available with them. May not even recognize the opportunities. I take my case. I'm totally illiterate about the share market. So while my friends keep on discussing in WhatsApp groups or in one-to-one groups, oh, this is how this opportunity is going up, this sector is rising, we should invest in it. I said dumb, just listening to them, not knowing what are the opportunities, putting my money in FD because that's my limit of financial education. This is one sector of it, and I am supposed to be highly educated. MTech, BTech, and all that, PG diploma, all those things, and 30 years in experience, but still not aware. So now think about the barely educated women, women who have been educated only to the school level. So their education might have been totally bereft of financial matters, but how to access the financial, forget about financial markets, how to use finance to access the regular markets, how to negotiate for the best terms of trade in what they do regularly. That itself will be missing. So financial education will enable them to take informed financial decisions and which will make them eventually lead to a better quality of lives for themselves and their families. And that will empower them to become a mainstream of the financial system and also strive towards financial inclusion. I don't have the data of the efforts on financial inclusion which have been made with gender perspective of the data among the new accounts opened, how many are men, how many are women kind of thing. That data I don't have. But that itself should be a target to have all women should have an account. Financial inclusion should be an objective, and that can be achieved through financial education. And eventually, all this will lead to reducing of gender gaps in the economic empowerment of women. I expect the discussions today may throw light on how we can further this financial education, financial inclusion, and how IICA can play a role in it. And that's my takeaway from the entire discussion, that how I can incorporate the lessons into my interventions in the next 1 year, next 3 years, next 5 years. So with that, I'll close it because I'm not as I said, an expert on the topic. The experts are here. They will talk on it. And with this, I wish everyone all the best for the seminar, and I hope it's a fruitful seminar for all those who are participating and passively and those who are participating actively. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your opening remarks. It nicely lays down the background of the webinar. It is time to have the keynote address now. Before I invite Sri Manoj Pandey for the keynote address, let me provide a brief introduction about him. Sri Manoj Pandey is the Joint Secretary with Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Government of India, and concurrently holds the post of CEO of Investor Education and Protection Fund Authority. He is an Indian Revenue Service officer of 1992 batch and has worked on important roles in the Ministry of Finance earlier. He has been successfully leading the program and activities of IEPFA, especially its awareness program, which have been spreading the message of investor education and protection on the ground. With that brief introduction, may I please invite Sri Manoj Pandey to share his views on the subject. Sri Manoj Pandey, please.
Shri Praveen Kumar, DG and CEO, Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, Shri Kamakhya Narayan Singh, IPFA Research Chair at IICA, Ms. Nandita Mishra, Economic Advisor, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, discussion panelists, Professor Seema Sharma, Professor and Head Department of Management, IIT Delhi, Srimati Monika Halan, Adjunct Professor in ISM and IICA, and also founder Juncture Financial Education, participants of this webinar. A very good morning. On the occasion of World Day of Social Justice, I welcome all dignitaries participating in this webinar. It's good that IPFA Research Chair at IICA has organized this topical discussion because it's of immense importance for IEPFA, the activities which we are performing towards investor education and awareness. We all know that the principles of gender equality, as DG CEO IICA also mentioned, it's a topic of great importance, and it forms part of Indian Constitution. It's there in preamble, fundamental rights, fundamental duties, directive principles. The Constitution itself grants equality to women, but also empowers the state to adopt various measures of positive discrimination in favor of women. India has also been participant of various international conventions towards commitments to secure equal rights for women. And going back to 1993, ratification of the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which we know as CEDAW. It goes without saying that both women and men need to be sufficiently and effectively financially literate to participate in economic activities and to take appropriate financial decisions for themselves. However, this is also a known fact that women often have less access to financial knowledge and lower access to formal financial products than men. Therefore, it is required that they are sufficiently made financially literate so that they effectively participate in economic activities. It has been noted by all analysts and political makers that since women are likely to be closer to the children and many a times or take primary responsibility for child rearing, for educating the children during their early days of schooling, they would have a major role in inculcating the good habits of savings, investments, and also skills to the children. Therefore, it is all the more important that they need to have adequate financial skills, not only for themselves, but also to prepare the future generation for a good financial decision. I've come across a study by International Network on Financial Education of OECD, which reveals that worldwide participation of women in financial matters and consequently their understanding is lower compared to men. It's only in comparison, and it's not only in context of developing countries, but also in some of the developed countries. For example, it was found in the study that in UK, only 49% of women are aware of concept of compound interest against 75% of the men. At the same time, in countries like Poland, about 60% of women do not know that high investments are accompanied by high risks against 45% of men. OECD INFE has developed guidance for policymakers and other stakeholders in the development and implementation of financial education initiatives for women based on the analysis of their national experiences and other evidences. Some of the recommendations I would list down here: identify and take into account general disparities in opportunities and outcomes when designing financial education strategies for overall population of the country. Address women's financial education through existing policies aimed at improving gender equality. Identify the needs of women and girls with respect to their financial knowledge and financial strategies, confidence with a particular focus on their ability to make ends meet, save, choose and use financial products, and seek information and advice. Identify and address key priorities and target subgroups among women and girls depending on the circumstances of a country. Now, most important of the two are promote the involvement and coordination among the relevant stakeholders, including public, private, and civil bodies with an interest in gender issues and financial literacy, and identify and address barriers that may prevent women from accessing financial education and from improving their financial literacy. In public domain, we come across a large research materials which on the subject. All India Debt and Investment Survey, which is administered by National Statistics Office, provides some measures of financial inclusion in India. Survey of 2019 would show gender disaggregated data, which may be a useful measure of how women own and use various financial instruments. The survey would reveal that around 81% of the women in rural areas and slightly higher number in urban areas had deposit accounts in banks. This was found to be an improvement over the earlier 77% of the population. The male-female gap in bank account ownership now has reduced over the past few years, thanks due to Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana accounts. It is now being acknowledged that our country has succeeded in reducing the gender gap in financial inclusion by around 14 to 15% points during 2014-17. And this also has been widely acknowledged. In a research article in public domain by Savita Rani and Neha Goyal would reveal that NCFE conducted financial literacy and inclusion survey in India in 13-14 and 18-19 to assess the status of financial literacy and inclusion and to establish the extent to which the program should be developed to improve literacy status in the country. And it was found in both surveys that women are less literate as compared to men. The survey of 2018-19 has been summarized in the report that 27% females do not maintain a budget for household expenses. Now, 64% females are not able to meet living costs without borrowing. And 94% females have not gathered any information to evaluate the financial products. And here only 5% females understand the concept of compound interest. And 43% women would only show favorable financial behavior. So there is a gap between awareness of and holding operating of the financial products. But there has been a perceptible improvement also which has been captured, that the positive attitude, the percentage of women's positive financial attitude has now grown up. It's around 90%. So Awareness and financial knowledge due to various schemes of the government has gone up in last 5 years. And overall financial literacy has also increased to around 21%. This outcome could be due to various interventions by various groups, civil societies, including interventions by the government in last 5, 6 years. As DG CEO IICA had also talked about, like schemes like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao scheme, Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, and various other financial inclusion schemes empowering not only semi-urban, urban women, but also rural women. For example, Department of Financial Services is running various schemes like Pradhan Mantri Jandan Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana, Atal Pension Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, Stand Up India for financial inclusion and entrepreneurship, development of people across the country, including that of women. Now, the share of the women would also show it has gone up. For example, one example I would like to quote, and that is of Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana in 2021. It was found that around more than 50% of the accounts belong to women. That's a very good development in the field of financial inclusion. Benefits are also extended to women under Prime Minister's Employment Generation Program. This will also show that the details of generation of self-employment opportunities through establishment of micro enterprises in the non-farm sector by helping the artisans, unemployed youth. There is a growing trend, and it is seen that in 2021 it has gone up to 37% of the women participation in number of micro enterprises. Similar trend has been seen in National Rural Livelihood Mission, Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gramin Kaushal Yojana, and skill development through rural self-employment and training institutes, which we know as RCTs, which enable a trainee to take bank credit and start her own micro enterprises. It will show that it's quite a healthy trend where participation of women would be growing over the years. Total number of women trained have also gone up. So all these measures taken by government is towards financial empowerment of women. Not only this, but also towards Rashtriya Mahila Kosh loan schemes. I think women have been benefited. Let me quote from RBI's National Strategy for Financial Inclusion, which states, there has been growing evidence on how financial inclusion has a multiplier effect in boosting overall economic output, reducing poverty and economic inequality at the national level. Financial inclusion of women is particularly important for gender equality and women's economic empowerment. Now, what IPFA is doing? IPFA, as we all are aware, has twin objectives. One, refunding back the shares and the dividends and amounts which have been transferred to IPFA, and second, investor education and awareness. So far, we have approved close to 24,000 claims in last 3 years, transferring about 1.45 crore shares and dividends. Combined value of both at the market value would come to more than rupees 1100 crore. On investor awareness programs, IPFA has conducted series of investor awareness programs in rural and urban areas for spreading awareness related messages among general public with special emphasis on women. With financial and social inclusion, particularly of the poor and underprivileged being a key national agenda, IPFA has undertaken a number of initiatives. It has collaborated with various organizations for propagation of financial literacy. As on date, more than 62,000 IAPs have been conducted in rural and urban areas, covering more than 29 lakh citizens. CST e-governance is organizing IAPs in rural areas through the common service centers on behalf of the authority. And till date, more than 57,500 IAPs covering more than 26 lakh citizens have been conducted. Now, a project for 15,000 IAPs in 117 aspirational districts intending to cover rural citizens from 117 aspirational districts of 28 states, with a special focus on women, is in progress. Many videos which are getting captured by CACs would show that women are coming up and in not only opening bank accounts but also would also be going towards products like insurance schemes, realizing the importance of its safety. A memorandum of understanding between IPFA and Nehru Yuva Kendra Sangathan has also been signed, and it will use the outreach and network of youth clubs for conducting IAPs in 50 districts on pilot basis, covering 2,500 villages in 50 districts. IPFA has also collaborated with India Post Payment Bank for holding investor awareness and financial literacy. It will be covered through 23 postal circles and 650 branches. So far, 200 camps educating 1.5 lakh citizens has been organized, which also covers a large female population. On January 24, 2022, on the occasion of National Girls Child Day, IPFA organized virtual events and IAPs in association with CAC governance through Facebook Live and webinar with ICI, where discussions were held for ways of women's financial inclusion. More than 1.5 lakh participated during the live event. Awareness messages are being aired on Doordarshan, including regional kendras in multiple languages. Also on Lok Sabha television and discussion programs on All India radio titled Sajak Niveshak, Surakshit Niveshak. A very important initiative was taken in terms of rural investors handbook for rural and semi-urban areas in English, Hindi and vernacular languages in collaboration with CAC governance. A series of 6 short films having participation from women in the films in the rural and semi-urban areas has been launched in association with CAC, where 6 short films and modules of 5 to 6 minutes each, highlighting the importance of budget, savings, importance of insurance schemes, and various social security schemes of the government has been provided in those modules. It also would portray a common man falling prey to the Ponzi schemes and the consequences. Realizing the importance of women in the family, women characters have a key role in all these 6 modules. A society in which women does not become a market participants, and also participate in investments and conscious investments, and is not included in the financial fold, may lose out on innovation and growth, as we have seen in many success stories in our country. We have, as part of organizations of government, research chair at IICA, the civil societies, and the informed people should try to reach out to as many people in this country, particularly the female population, to spread the message of financial inclusion and importance of coming into the fold of markets, because that only will lead to a country's growth. Economic democracy would necessarily mean a participation of women in equal measure as men. Before concluding, let me request the participants and panelists the following, and I think that should also be part of the discussion. Make the financial world simple. Why I am saying? Because if you have to take the message to semi-urban and rural areas, which is largely would not be aware of the meaning of various products, and there would be a mental block in terms of understanding the meanings of equities, derivatives, and more complex financial products. You will not be successful in bringing the women, particularly in rural and semi-urban areas, into this world. So start informing them in simple language the meaning of various financial instruments and their importance. Start from opening bank accounts, loans, and thereafter the complex instruments. The small films like IPFA has been rolling out, the civil societies, the various groups should also come out in form of very simple messages conveying the meaning of complex instruments. The jargons of equities, derivatives, and other products have to be simplified, have to be broken into pieces. They should not be mystified, making non-urban, uneducated, and not so well-informed women also to understand and ultimately participate in these instruments. It should not be a metro-centric, urban-centric. The message has to go to semi-urban, small areas, rural areas. True economic democracy in country can only be assured if true financial inclusion of women also happens. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sri Manoj Pandey for your keynote address and letting us know about what has been achieved by IEPFA till date, especially in the area of investor education, and what are its plans for the future. IEPFA, since its establishment on 7 September 2016, has achieved a lot over a period of just about 6 years. I'm sure that under your guidance and leadership, IPF will achieve much more in future. At the end of opening remarks and keynote address, we would like to thank once again Sri Praveen Kumar and Sri Manoj Pandey for sparing their valuable time on a Sunday and sharing their views on the subject with participants of this webinar. We would be happy, sir, if you both of you stayed throughout this program, but I understand it's a Sunday and your time is valuable. Thank you to both of you once again. We will start with the next phase of our webinar now. This phase comprises presentation by speakers. Before I invite the panel members, I would share a bit of research that we are currently undertaking on the theme of our current discussion and about my experience related to women economic empowerment and financial education. Incidentally, as Manoj Pandey was sharing the data and statistics from NCFE survey, it was when I was working as the CEO of NCFE that we undertook that survey and came out with the National Strategy on Financial Education. So I very closely relate with what has been stated by Sri Manoj Pandey. International development agencies like World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and international NPOs like Gates Foundation are emphasizing women participation in development programs. As also indicated by DG IICA, various ministries and departments of Government of India are also highlighting women participation in their development programs. It is understood that a woman is economically empowered when she has both the ability to succeed and advance economically and the power to make and act on economic decisions. To succeed and advance economically, women need the skills and resources to compete in markets, as well as fair and equal access to economic institutions. On the other hand, to have the power and agency to benefit from economic activities, women need to have the ability to make and act on decisions and control resources and profits. As already shared earlier, linked to women empowerment and their participation in socio-economic development of our society is their extent or level of financial education. In one of our recent research papers that has been accepted for publication, we found that while financial education positively impacts the use of digital financial transaction, this tendency was lower for females, indicating perhaps that requirement of focused program of financial education for females would be helpful in this regard. In another paper, we found that women are more financially fragile And the fragility was measured in terms of income shock and expenditure shock. An appropriate program of financial education could help in better management of financial fragility. This is remarkable finding coming in the period of COVID-19, when large segment of our society, especially at the lower income group, was exposed to income shock and expenditure shock due to lockdown. In another study on investor protection, which we are currently working on, we found that financially literate individuals were less likely to participate in Ponzi schemes as compared to the individuals who are not financially literate. This is in line with the previous studies which have been done globally. Earlier in my roles on financial inclusion and financial education in different parts of Africa and Asia, as also with my roles with UNDP and Asian Development Bank, I have had first-hand experience of observing how financial inclusion programs lead to not only economic empowerment of women, but also their social empowerment. If programs of financial education, which work on the demand side of financial services ecosystem, get added to such programs of financial inclusion, which work on the supply side of financial services ecosystem, then holistic socio-economic empowerment of women can be achieved. With that brief background of the subject, I would now invite the expert panel members to share their views. We have three experts who would be sharing their knowledge with us today. We'll begin with Srimati Nandita Mishra. Unfortunately, we learned that on account of some urgent issues, Srimati Mishra would not be able to join us online. She has apologized for her absence and has shared her video presentation on the subject. Srimati Mishra, an Indian Economic Service Officer of the 1993 batch, is currently working as Economic Advisor in Ministry of Corporate Affairs. She has over 29 years of development sector professional experience in formulating, implementing, and monitoring social sector infrastructure schemes in India. And with different ministries of Government of India, she has made valuable contribution to the sector. Can we have the presentation by Srimati Mishra, please? IT team.
Everyone. Today we will be discussing a very important topic, the importance of financial education in promoting gender equality and women economic empowerment. India has been carving out a new story growth under the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This growth has seen a dynamic shift from the development of women to woman-led development. This change in the narrative has been achieved through the introduction of a myriad range of woman-centric policies and infusion of huge amounts of money in these schemes and policies by the government. In the context of this woman-led growth, financial inclusion, financial literacy, and financial education are some of the key thrust areas where a stark improvement has been possible in the past few years. This trend is not only confined to India, but governments around the world have been giving more attention to the critical need to empower consumers through financial education. The benefits of financial education are manifold. The first benefit, that it is a vital clog in creating demand-side response to the initiatives of the supply-side interventions. The second, it helps people achieve financial well-being by accessing appropriate financial products and services. The third benefit, it supports the achievement of the fourth SDG, the education goal, titled Ensure Inclusive and Equitable Quality Education and Promote Lifelong Opportunities, Learning Opportunities for All. India has made tremendous progress in bringing its citizens into the formal financial system over the last many years. Since India's first National Strategy for Financial Education (NSFE) was released in the year 2013, there have been many developments in the financial inclusion scenario of the country. One of the most significant of these developments can be seen from the results of the All India Financial Inclusion and Literacy Survey of the year 2019. The survey revealed, as compared to 16% in 2013, 21% female respondents achieved the minimum threshold score in each component of financial literacy as described by the OECD INFE. According to the OECD INFE, the term financial literacy is defined as a combination of awareness, knowledge, skill, attitude, and behavior necessary to make sound financial decisions and ultimately achieve individual financial well-being. In many countries, women display lower financial knowledge than men and are also less confident in their financial knowledge and skills. Even though this gap is being breached now, one needs to look at and understand how and why women and men have different levels of financial literacy, crucial to developing policies aimed at reducing the gender gap. The gender differences in financial literacy are correlated with differences in socioeconomic conditions of men and women. Some of the major factors influencing financial literacy among women could be the lack of freedom to manage their finances independently, lack of accessibility to financial institutions, lack of information on existing financial services and requirements. In India, there is a high proportion of non-working women, as indicated by the low labor force participation rate. This creates a lack of financial resources available to women. Considering these challenges, an increasing number of countries at different income levels have acknowledged the need to address the financial literacy of women and girls by developing and implementing dedicated financial education policies and programs, including through their national strategies for financial education. Financial education, therefore, can be an important tool, albeit not the only one, to improve women's economic empowerment and financial independence. With the aim to improve policies and to promote gender equality in the economy in both member and non-member countries, the OECD launched in 2010 a gender initiative to examine existing barriers to gender equality in education, employment, and entrepreneurship. In the year 2012, the G20 leaders meeting in Mexico recognized the need for women to gain access to financial services and financial education. G20 leaders also asked the OECD International Network on Financial Education INFE, together with the Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion and the World Bank, to identify any barriers that they may face. Strengthening financial inclusion in India has been one of the important developmental agendas of both the government and the four financial sector regulators, viz. the RBI, the SEBI, the IRDAI, and the Pension Fund Regulatory Authority of India. Financial literacy supports the pursuit of financial inclusion by enabling the customers to make informed choices leading to their financial well-being. Subsequent to completion of the period of the first National Strategy for Financial Education NSFE from the year 13 to 18, a review of the progress made was undertaken by the Technical Group on Financial Inclusion and Financial Literacy under the chairperson of the Deputy Governor of RBI under the FSDC Council meetings. Based on the review of the progress made under the strategy and keeping in view the various developments that have taken place over the last 5 years, notably the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, the National Center for Financial Education, in consultation with the four financial sector regulators and other relevant sector stakeholders, have prepared the revised NFSE from the year 2020 to 2025. As of now, some of the most prominent schemes by the government to achieve the last mile delivery of financial inclusion and literacy, especially for women, are: first, the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. This national mission on financial inclusion was launched in the year August 2014, immediately after the coming into Prime Ministership by our Honorable Narendra Modi ji. The three pillars of the mission were to bank the unbanked, to secure the unsecured, and to fund the unfunded. These initiatives have been successful in providing a major impetus to female financial literacy and empowerment in our country. For instance, the number of rural urban female beneficiaries covered under PMJDY was 24.8 crores as of January 2022. These statistics are an indicator of financial inclusion being a national priority for the government, as it is an enabler for holistic growth. The growth of PMGDY, just a second, led interventions over a short span of 7 years have in effect produced both transformational as well as directional change. Under PMJDY, the progress as of January 2022, the number of PMJDY accounts is 44.58 crores. Deposits in the accounts is rupees 1,57,099 crores. The number of women beneficiaries is 24.8 crores, that is 55.6% of the total. The Pradhan Mantri, the second one is the Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana. As of January 2022, the cumulative enrollment is 27.05 crores, of which women are 47%. Under the Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, the cumulative enrollment is 12.02 crores. Again, here similarly, women are 47% of the total beneficiaries. Under the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, the progress made is 32.93 crore as of January 2022, and women accounts 68% of all Mudra loan accounts. For the Stand Up India scheme, the total number of accounts, all the figures I'm giving for January 2022, I've got these from the Department of Financial Services. The total number of loan accounts is 1.31 lakhs, and the total women loan accounts is 1.06 lakhs. So women form 82% of all. Atal Pension Yojana also, similarly, the total number of subscribers is 3.76 crores. Here women form 44% of the total number of subscribers. Despite all this, there remains a dogged gender gap with respect to financial inclusion. Some steps that can be taken to bridge this gender gap further can be to bring in more women in leadership roles, encouraging women entrepreneurship, changing the mindset, as the society also needs to recognize the role and importance of women in the development of the country. Traditionally, women tend to make lesser use of financial instruments when compared to men. To ensure proper usage of instruments such as loans by women, banks could provide financial literacy and entrepreneurial training to women. As India continues to take rapid strides towards becoming a major global economic power, the need for women's participation in the nation's growth story is becoming more critical with each passing day. This would not only make women more independent and empowered, but would also facilitate the growth of the whole nation. To wrap it up, one can again aptly quote our Honorable Prime Minister saying that the progress of humanity is incomplete without the empowerment of women.
Thank you for that presentation, Srimati Mishra. Your presentation clearly brings out the role of financial education and financial inclusion in promoting gender equality and women economic empowerment. As indicated by her, we are aware that as at the end of January 2022, close to 44.5 crore people have been covered under the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. Interestingly, this is more than the population of any other country other than India and China. This just shows the scale that we have achieved in terms of financial inclusion. Now we would invite our next speaker, Dr. Seema Sharma, to share her views on the subject. Dr. Sharma is a professor in the area of economic and statistical analysis in the Department of Management Studies at IIT Delhi. Her research interests are sustainable development, policy analysis, and socio-economic analysis, and her research has been published in high-impact international referred journals. In the past, she has worked on consulting assignments and has done research projects funded by various government agencies and ministries. Dr. Sharma, please.
Thank you, Professor Singh. Thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity. I hope I am audible.
Yeah, we can see and we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, I think first of all, I must thank you for giving me this opportunity, even though we have been talking on this topic for decades now. But in any case, since the problem is not resolved yet, so we all are struggling together to find solutions which can give us, quick and efficient deliverables. So, I would like to have a deeper discussion on this. You see, ultimately, the end goal of the financial literacy also is to ensure that women is able to participate more in the economic activities in the society, in the country. If we look at the history, and if we say that women is considered to be the secondary gender, so the question is that why is it like that? Why our social fabric is like that? So I believe the reason is that, and it has been talked about earlier also, that when the rules of the society were made, women was not allowed to participate in that. That is the primary reason. And now the question is that the government has come up with various initiatives. We have got success in that, moderate success in that. Educational institutes are not discriminating so far as the education, delivery of education is concerned. Corporate opportunities are accessible to the women. But even then, if we look at our data, the statistics are not satisfactory. If we look at our data for the women participation in the labor force, it was pointed out in the previous presentation also. So we are around at 20% of the women are participating in the economy, in the labor force. This is something which is worrisome. One more thing I want to point out here, that even though we all have been talking about the declining trend in the participation of women as its percentage, in the total labor force, which is coming down over the years. But I believe that we should not be so much alarmed with the decline in the statistics in terms of percentage, because our circle is increasing, our population is increasing, and the pie, of course, is not growing along with that in the same proportion. But this does not mean that the opportunities are not increasing, or women who are in the economy, that number is not increasing. Of course that is increasing. And yet, of course, the fact is that there is a scope, and there's a lot of potential that, of course, we can utilize our existing schemes, our existing opportunities, to ensure that women, more and more women, are participating in the economic activities, and of course that is going to help us to put the country on a higher growth trajectory. uh, Women, now, of course, if I talk at the international level, we all know that United Nations have set up the women empowerment principles. They have given 7 principles to achieve our sustainable development goal number 5, which talks about the gender equality. And they are saying to the corporate world that in order to promote gender equity in your organizations, you have to follow these principles. And their slogan is equality means business, which means they are telling the world that, women, more women participation and fair treatment to women, of course, is going to give you a better business. Because nowadays, even the for the B2B businesses also, the companies are looking for those partners where there is gender equality is more in practice. If I am heading a B school right now, if I talk about my B school, before companies join, even we are IIT Delhi, but they ask us, what is your the gender profile, what percentage of your students are the girls. So I think this is becoming more and more important. Our worry is that on the practical ground, we are not able to see that incidence as a very high incidence. Why? The problem is that we are huge in numbers. Look at the population, and if we look at most of our population is still in the agriculture, and the problem is that whether we talk about economic opportunities or we talk about the financial literacy, of course we have to see where exactly our women are placed and how are we going to create those opportunities to them there and then. If I now talk about the financial literacy, see, of course, JAM has been a great initiative with great success, but I believe that that was the first step that we have taken. Okay, we have, in a way, we can't say that we have taken off with that. That was the strong foundation that we have laid. If we look at the statistics on the bank account, the data between male and female accounts, of course, is comparable. Women 81% in urban, and in rural 80% of the women, they are having their accounts. But when it comes to the debit cards, credit cards, e-wallets, digital payments, we know that women are nowhere. They don't even understand what is this. This is the problem now. After JAM, this is something we need to fix. Unless and until the person who is going to be the beneficiary of a particular government scheme or anything else which is available or accessible to them in the public open forum, unless and until they do have that kind of empowerment, that competence, I do not think they can benefit. I do not think that all the resources that we are going to put in that will actually be able to generate some benefits to the targeted beneficiaries. And here we often talk about the schemes by the central government, we talk about the various initiatives taken by various banks, agencies. I believe that I think the states have to take the major responsibility for the financial literacy, not for men, also, I mean, not for women, also for men. And through their Panchayati Raj system, I believe a lot can be achieved. The way they are, the states are communicating and catering to all other schemes through the Panchayati system, I believe this financial literacy is something which can be done. And why this I am talking about, because when I have been doing some projects for government schemes where I felt that this panchayati system is a very, very strong system. And everybody, if I talk about the rural area, they are very much comfortable with this system. There is nothing that they feel that this is something we will not be able to, kind of adjust to. So I believe that if we integrate the already existing mechanisms with the delivery of this particular tool also on the awareness education, we have huge network of post offices also. So I think rather than coming up with the initiatives or schemes in silos, we really need to bring everything under one umbrella, because we must understand that we cannot just overburden the people whom we already say that, it's not that their financial literacy is low. Otherwise also, if you look at their education levels, the general literacy levels are very, very low. So unless and until we come up with some simple solutions which are actually delivered to them in a mode with which they are more comfortable, I really don't think that we would be able to quickly find a solution for this particular problem. So I think that that's much more important. This has to be taken up as a national level agenda. And just like what we did when we started with Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, unless and until we do like that, the women has to be brought to the front. And it's not just about the development of the country. It's not just about increasing our GDP. It's not just about that women are working but they are not paid. We must value that. It is more about talking about a sustainable society. Now you see, corona has brought all of us on one single platform where we all understand that no, we need a more sustainable planet. We need a society which is a happy society. And we all know that if women are given those positions where the key decision making is done, then of course we are going to have a happy society, we are going to have a prosperous society, we are going to have a sustainable society. So the catalyst what we need for that, of course, apart from the education that we need, because when we talk about education, we say that if you give them education, they will create opportunities for them. So after education, I believe this financial literacy is something which is going to benefit not just the generation which is there in the schooling or the higher education level, but the generation which is sitting at the home, and they do have the potential to create economic opportunities for them. But the point is that due to lack of financial literacy, they are not able to draw a vision for their economic progress. So that is the problem. I think what we need to look for is, rather than talking about we should do it, we should do it, we should do it, or talking about we should do it this way, I think we should try to deliver these things in a manner which is most comfortable to them. They are able to absorb it well. That's the challenge we really need to work on. So I think that's all from my side. And in case there are some questions, I am open to that.
Thank you, Professor Sharma, for bringing out your views on the subject. We note what is also happening in the academic field where you are currently directly associated. And we see that we are making progress, but still, as we say, miles to go. Incidentally, we are working on a project currently, which you just indicated, under the guidance of DG and under the guidance of CEO IPFA, on mainstreaming programs of financial education at panchayat level for rural women, and especially focusing on the digital financial transaction. Because as discussed earlier, we noticed that digital financial transaction is a great tool. But unfortunately, those who should be deriving the maximum benefit out of these particular tools, they are not getting the benefit. So we are working on it, and we expect that there should be soon something on this. And we would be also happy to work with you and relate with you. Thank you once again. We'll take up if there are also other questions.
Just to add to what you're talking about, I was doing some impact assessment exercises for the ministry, and what I realized, we try to deal with them in our formal ways. We go with, at the most, we say we are having our questionnaires in our local language, etc. We have people to explain. But I think that's not the right way to connect to them. First, we have to make them comfortable. We have to be with them. Then only they start giving you the feedback which would match the actual reality. So what I am trying to say that Professor saying we have already lost decades, and a lot of resources have been put in. Huge network has been built by the government, and government has done a lot. But if even after that, if we feel that we have not achieved big milestones, so the problem is that the actual beneficiary is not able to benefit. We need to look at that. Where is the problem? Why we are not able to connect? So I faced this problem in my exercise, so I actually addressed that well. I got wonderful results out of that later on, and the report was submitted to the ministry. So the point is that connect is a problem. It's the connect which we really need to connect to them, because otherwise what will happen? We will come up with wonderful solutions which we intellectuals feel that this is the great solution, we will do that. But the person who is sitting there with a glass window, who is the actual beneficiary, is again not going to benefit anything. So where are you going to see the multiplier effect of that? You are not going. You will see some impact, but you will not see the impact to the full potential.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
So efficiency is very, very important.
Yeah, the kind of information that our team has from the ground, that is what we are focusing on. That even when the program of financial education is to be conducted, for example, it would not be conducted by a resource person who is based in Mumbai or Delhi, but it would be done through the bank Saki who actually resides in the village, so that women are able to connect with them. Thank you. We would have more insightful information like this, especially from the next speaker. I would invite Srimati Monika Halan. She is a trusted financial writer and speaker. Apart from being a faculty member with NISM and IICM, um, she has also founded an organization, and she brings a whole lot of experience from the ground on what women feel, what men feel, especially on the financial education and financial literacy. With her book on financial education, she has already enabled a lot of people to make relevant financial decisions when it comes to their life. With that word, I would invite Srimati Monika Halan to please offer her views and comments on this.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kamakhya. Thank you for this invite. And it's a very important topic, especially close to the work that I do, because empowerment of women with money is something which empowers the entire family. And a lot of discussion right now over the last hour has happened on what I call the supply side part of the story, which is the offices, the government, the places of work. But I am going to do what I do, which is drill down to very basic issues, which is I think we need to rework the way women deal with the house, or the household deals with women. And that statistic where women's participation in the workforce has gone down has actually been a very worrying stat, because it is instead of growing the share of women in the workplace, we're actually shrinking. And I have to quote a very interesting CFA study. So CFA works with, they do this whole thing on women empowerment with money, and they run different surveys. So they ran surveys on what are the problems about that women face when they go to work. And they said that there was such a clear difference between their results from the West, typically the US and Europe, and India, South Asia specifically. What women articulated as problems were all to do with the workplace, deterrence, office politics, late night meetings, lack of facilities, open gender and pay discrimination. The Indian women talked about how difficult it is to get out to work. So the Indian household likes the woman's salary, but dislikes the fact that she has to go out to work. Right? So there is this overhang of, for want of a better word, patriarchy, where the fight was initially for women to get an education and go to work. And in that excitement of trying to go to work, earlier generations, they promised that nothing would suffer, right? So there was a deterrent in the joint family system to go to work. Nuclearization solved some of those, but the attitudes have remained very, very still old-fashioned. So the promise was that the house will not suffer. I do need to go to work. And that has unfortunately perpetuated. So even in the discourse, and now I'm talking not just of the rural women, I am saying this is the story of the urban mass affluent, the educated, the BA, MBAs, the engineers, the doctors. The home somewhere becomes a deterrent. And it shows up even in the way that we speak about it, in our social gatherings, the way that we talk about it. The way that a woman will say is that my partner, my husband helps. If two people are going out to work, what is this word help? Should it not be sharing of the household chores? So there is a need to reimagine the home where if two people are going out to work, then the work at home is also equally shared. So the disproportionate burden on the women in terms of other than the physical differences where the woman carries the baby and the first few years with, that is a very different, and that is biological. You cannot change that. But post that, there is a whole lot which can happen within the Indian household where along with the income, you're okay to let her go to work. And for that, COVID has been a disaster for women because now she's available. She doesn't have to go out. The income is coming. And between work, you can also attend to all that needs to be attended to. So I think we need to change the discourse from the household. So the change actually will come from within the household. Of course, the enabling structures of safe transport, toilets, looking at the disparity in income, you're trying to bridge that, are all pieces that need to fall into place. And one of the key parts of this conversation, which I have had with almost hundreds of groups of women, both young, middle-aged, old, is about financial empowerment. And the way that I look at it, that women need to put on their money oxygen mask first. And this story can get repeated at every income, every situation, every community. It doesn't really matter who you are, but women need to put on their money oxygen mask. And let's take two situations. So all women work. Women all work at home. Some women work both inside and outside of the home. So let's take the situation of the woman who's working outside of the home and managing the home. She typically has very little time left for managing money because you've got to manage the home, the entire mental load is on you, plus there is pressure at work. So the one job that she doesn't want to do, because it does require time and effort, and you need to really engage with these difficult things, decisions on money, is money management. That is that one job she hands over, which the man is very happy to take, right? That's the one job. He may not want to do the laundry, may not want to do the cooking, may not want to do the kids, but that job of money management, he is happy to take. So it sort of works perfectly because that's one thing that he doesn't have time to do all this. She gives that up, and that's the one job that he is happy to take. And in doing that, she has handed over the power of empowering herself with looking after money. And there are various studies. I don't want to, bore everybody with a lot of data and charts, but essentially the studies are showing this, that in households where the men share household work, women participate better in long-term and big-ticket decisions on money. So women, again, we've got data to show women do very well in the managing the household expenses. All right, so everybody knows that women run the homes and they are very good managers of the money. But the minute those thousands translate into lakhs, the 3 zeros become 5 zeros, those decisions are handed over to the men. The minute the decision is not about today, next week, next month, but about the future, then that decision is handed over to the men. So big ticket decisions and long-term decisions are handed over to the men. How do you change this for women who work outside the home? I think for them, the understanding that I need to know and I need to be a participant in this discussion. So I'm not saying you take on that one more job, but I'm saying that they need to start asking some basic questions on what is the household income? How much am I spending out of my income on household chores? So what happens typically in a household, and these are real stories, real cases which have come to me, where the woman is spending on household. It's natural because you're looking after the house, you're paying the grocery, you're paying all the household bills are paid by the women who are working out, who are earning an income, and the assets then get built by the man. The Indian law does not believe in the community of marital property, which means the asset belongs to he or she who pays for it. Which means that in case there's a situation of a divorce, and those numbers are increasing, then the man gets to keep the assets because that's where his savings went. The woman just paid for the dry cleaning bills. So it's very important to start at a very basic level to ask that question, how much money are we earning both together? This is the way that we will spend. This is either pro rata or equal. This is your saving, this is my saving. Of course, you can have nominees, you can have joint assets, but that oversight on savings, and especially long-term savings, PF, which then comes to the second point, that when a woman takes a baby break, when she takes a break to look after the elders in the house, the partner's PF is not affected, his retirement corpus is not affected, but hers is. So she should remember that and aggressively build her own retirement portfolio. And this is true for women who are working both inside and outside the home. For the housewives, this story becomes even more complicated because whatever the law might say, we know that when the girl gets married, and this is more true of women who don't work outside the home, her share sort of the parental wealth is given to her, for want of a better word, with dowry. So yes, dowry is not used. People like us don't use the word dowry, but drill down into the real world, and whatever clothes you want to put that on, that is what it is. So she signs an NOC on the assets which she should have inherited, and she gets whatever gold and money at the time of the marriage. And woe befall a daughter-in-law who asks for her share in the in-laws' house. So the financial situation of this housewife is very precarious. So what does she do? And inherently, I think women are very smart. So what does she do? She buys gold. Okay, so policymakers have traditionally dismissed this as a bad economic decision. Policymakers have simply not understood that she's just looking after herself. There is no asset which is coming to her from either side in her name. The husband may not be building any asset in her name. What does she do? She buys gold. At risk are the women who don't even buy this gold because, women like us don't buy gold, but don't onboard the formal financial system, understanding modern financial products like mutual funds, which they need to use to build their retirement corpus. So at risk is this housewife who is pretty much, she doesn't have oversight on any of the assets. So there are some very simple things that I always recommend that women do. One is that you have to start asking questions within the house, and these are very difficult questions. Questions on inheritance are not easy because there's a whole lot of baggage associated with talking about what you're going to inherit. There's a lot of already, we pretend that things are very good in families, but they're not. It's most marriages, there are a whole lot of negotiations going on, and for a woman to ask questions on, even ask the question, what happens to me if the partner dies, right? These are not questions we ask, but these are questions a lot of women think about. So there has to be a way to articulate some of that. And the duty of care, really, of the man in the story is to protect her without her even asking. And again, I have to give you a personal story here. So because of what I do, obviously, I'm the person who handles all the finances in the house, right? So my husband is in the situation of saying, okay, she handles it. So he typically, for many years, did not have any oversight on his assets. But here is where the difference in gender and how we are programmed to look after the other comes in, where as a fiduciary, then I would ensure that all the paperwork was done, the family was informed on what are the assets in whose name they are, where is the paperwork, where is the key to the locker, where are the passwords, right? So these sort of due diligences, which as a woman I will do for the family, an average man needs to start doing for his family. So this is an ongoing conversation. And while we can talk of we can talk of changing the world, we can talk of big schemes that we can implement. I think each of us needs to start implementing it in our own homes first, and then through our example, start broadcasting it. And then that real change is not only organic, it's got deep roots, and it's got the potential to increase in a radiating circle in an environment which has already been enabled by policy. We've heard all the wonderful schemes which are in place. And the good thing is that we are a very technology savvy nation, right? So we know how quickly UPI has been absorbed by the country. You go abroad and people are still writing checks and carrying currency notes. We're just scanning and using. So, and who's doing this? a lot of the people who we thought may not have had the ability to understand this technology. Right? So there is a role of technology to onboard this change of behavior in the marketplace as well. I'm going to just do a few very practical things that women can start doing. One is every woman, whether she's working just inside the house or both inside and outside the house, every woman must understand the cash flows of the household. How much comes in, how much goes out, what are the average spendings every month, every quarter, every year, and what is the savings of the household, and next, where do the savings go? Every woman must understand that there has to be an emergency fund that she creates, whether she creates in partnership with her partner, father, whoever you are with, or it is in her individual name, which you have eating money, you have rent money, you have EMI money for between 6 months to 2 years at least. You need that emergency money also to get out of toxic workplaces, toxic homes. So if the woman is empowered with, say, 2 years of living money, she can exit toxic places. So we should not start the conversation with women on money on things like retirement. And I have to tell you the story. The lady who runs Mandeshi Bank is a friend of mine, and she said, we started onboarding rural women on the pension product. It's a lovely mutual fund product designed especially for the women. Nothing wrong with the product, but these are women who had been investing in gold, cows, sheep, things you can see, pieces of land. And then you onboard them on this pension product. Pension products, by their structure, are long-term closed-end products which you cannot withdraw midway. So that's the first financial product they're introduced to. And this is, Chetna herself saying that, look, we made an error here. And then an emergency comes and the woman wants to access her savings. This is her money. This was promised that this is going to be for you. But this money is caught in a long-term closed-end product and there are very, very high costs of withdrawal. So what should we have built first? And this is a lesson to, I think, the entire sector, which, I've worked with Seva, I've worked with Mandeshi, to say that let's first build simple products where a woman can access that emergency money very quickly at a very low cost. Post that, we build something which she can access maybe a year or 2 years later, and then so on. And here I want to speak to the policymakers and say that everybody wants guaranteed products, and the best guarantees are provided by government securities. RBI Direct is fantastic, but so clunky. It is impossible even for a person like me to spend the time to understand how to bid for the bond which I plan to hold to maturity, a new issue GSEC. But this is the product that every household needs and wants. So some onboarding of the apps. So I think RBI should start working with some fintech providers to allow what crypto managed to do, which has been a disaster for household savings, this whole destruction of household savings in this horrible Ponzi called virtual digital asset. But we can still take a positive lesson and say, look, if they could reach those crores of people in the hinterlands, in tier 2, tier 3, in the villages, why can't we take government securities which issued by the RBI through an app to the people who actually need this security, who need the, if you're buying a 1-year bond, you know that you will get interest and you will get the money back, and you can ladder it by buying 1, 2, 3, 4, 30-year bonds. So I think we need to be able to get this safe product to the households, and we can have the conversations about riskier products or mutual funds much later. We need to onboard them onto safe financial products, get that confidence, and then slowly start talking to them about building slightly riskier portfolios, if at all. So I'm actually going to stop here and happy to answer questions if there are any. Dr. Kamakia.
Thank you for those very practical inputs, especially related to your experiences and how you have been interacting with women and general public at large. on bringing the message of basic financial education to the attention of everyone. Incidentally, a few decades ago, when I had my initial interaction with the microfinance sector in India, that was in 1990s, we learned that, as you indicated, especially related to financial ownership as also the financial control. So women would be getting microfinance loans, but actually the usage would be determined by the husband and the brothers and the fathers of those women. Thankfully, over a period of last few decades, this has changed drastically. If you go to the fields and relate with the women borrowers, now they are making decisions. Not all the decision, but it has changed to a great extent. And I think with the basic inputs that you provided on just being at least aware with to start with about what is going on in the household related to the finances, that could make a big headway on making decisions eventually by women. And as we have been discussing, women, at least in Indian society, Indian context, whether rural or urban, are still the central theme or the focus around which the entire family revolves. Decision making is a different thing. And more women are involved in decision making, especially financial decision making. It's much betterment for the family, for the society. So it's very valuable input that you indicated. Unfortunately, we have come to the close of the session, and let me see if I have any questions. There are no questions.
No, one question I want to
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
to any of the panelists, but perhaps I think Ms. Monika Halan may be able to. See, your interventions are quite valid, but I as a selfish person, because IICA works through the corporates and all that. What role IICA can play in furthering the whatever strategies you mentioned and whatever pitfalls you had mentioned for the women investing? So how can IICA play a role? If you can help me out on that, that will be very useful to me. Yeah.
I think the institutional role is really to democratize the learnings. So it is really in the content creation, in the outreach to get across these simple messages rather than, this whole blue sky, wall to wall, very big things that we try and impart. I think what we need is a baby steps approach, which doesn't intimidate and allows people to understand. And I have to give you one example. This is many years ago, I was doing a workshop for an NGO for their karyakartas. So these are villagers, but they are working in an NGO, they're karyakartas. And that is the time that that whole ULIP missiles was going on. Unfortunately, this is that 2007-8 period. And the owner of that NGO was very worried because people were just losing money. So I remember going to different villages and talking about just basics of finance. And then somebody asked the question on the Sensex, and I explained what a Sensex was. From then on, they understood what an index fund was. And that time, index funds were not really there in the market as such. The whole room understood the index fund and wanted to invest in it because they understood that long term, this is a way to get market return at a very low cost. So there is a way to onboard women. I'm saying that once women get that confidence that this is there beyond jargon, there is just common sense, they open up and they start asking questions. So for IIC, I think I would just say baby steps. Get people onboarded. Let them do basics themselves. And then we can solve those higher order problems later. But let's get the basics in place.
If I may intervene, sir, while concluding, this is what my prescription was also there, that let it not be jargonized. Sir, what is the mental blocks comes in between. It's like a typical mathematical problem. If a student in class 2 and 3, he or she comes across a mathematical problem which is not solved easily or explained truly in a true manner, in a simple manner by a teacher, then it would be ever a mental block for the student, be he or she. Similarly, when all these messages are simplified, what is a derivative? What is, as Ms. Monika Halan also said, index fund. Sensex. These are all not it's commonsensical things, but they are presented in a manner which is not easily understood by a common man or common woman. Here it's a gender neutral. Here I'll say, sir, it's not applicable only for women, but equally applicable for men. So it has to be demystified, simplified. Then only, sir, it's a very the technological platform. Now, women in the rural and semi-urban areas, even if you go to a vegetable vendor, roadside vendor, she is using a mobile phone and accepting Paytm money. So if they could understand, they are not understanding the underlying technologies, but they know how to use, how to accept the money. They know, they are confident the money is going to the bank. They can also be brought into equity market, derivatives market. If if they come to know, it's such a simple thing. But the moment if you want to explain in a manner which looks very, very complex and intimidating, as Monika Halan just mentioned, it's a true word, intimidating. Nobody would come to the financial fold. They would say, thank you very much. If I am not able to understand, it means it's very complex and we are not getting the true return. Thank you, sir.
And can I just add one more thing? So I think there are meta studies done to show that overall impact of financial literacy is not that much. What actually works is targeted interventions. And when is it that a person is most likely to understand or want to know more? At the moment that he or she is looking for a product. So, and at times of great change in your life situation, whether it's a marriage, a childbirth, you're looking for a home loan, you're looking for something, that is the moment at which education and that intervention has to be provided. So, targeted intervention is, I think, fantastic to do because you are reaching a person when he or she is seeking that information.
I will just conclude by saying the challenge. I am myself a challenge person. I retired 7 months, got some handsome retirement payoffs. I still don't know how to do it. I have a lot of bankers coming with flyers at this fund, that fund. At the end, it's still lying in the bank, just like a
Please stay
FD.
away from
End of the
insurance. Please just stay away from insurance
No,
and
no, I'm just saying that this is
cryptocurrency.
the challenge. Whatever level of education,
I know.
everyone faces where to invest. Insurance, basically, in government servants, we don't need much of insurance. That's the problem. That's why. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. At the end of this program, we thank everyone for their insightful views and comments on this subject. I'm sure that the viewers of this program would have immensely benefited from the views of all the participants and experts of this program. I would now invite our colleague Gaurav Mishra to propose a vote of thanks. Gaurav, please.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of IPFA Research Secretariat, Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, I would like to thank Shri Manoj Pandey, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and CEO IPF Authority for taking time out of his busy schedule and expressing his views on the subject. I thank Shri Praveen Kumar, DG and CEO, Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, for inspiring and guiding us in conduct of this webinar. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank Srimati Nandita Mishra Economic Advisor, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Dr. Seema Sharma, Professor and Head, Department of Management Studies, IIT Delhi, and Srimati Monika Halan, renowned writer, speaker, and author, for enlightening us with their views and expertise on the subject. I'm sure audiences would have greatly benefited from the insight on the subject. I also would like to thank all the participants for taking time out and joining in the webinar. And last and not the least, I thank the admin and IT teams at IICA for extending their support in smooth conduct of this webinar. Thank you all once again. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Jai Hind and wish you a nice day.
Thank you.